Why your Azure DevOps time estimates are always wrong, and how to fix it. Why your Azure DevOps time estimates are always wrong, and how to fix it. That's what we're tackling today. If you've been wondering about Azure DevOps Time Tracker, stick around. Next up, the sprint overrun problem no one wants to admit. Sprint planning sessions feel productive. Estimates get assigned, capacity gets calculated, and the board looks clean going into day 1. Then week 2 arrives, 3 features are at risk, 2 developers are behind, and no one can explain where the time went. The honest answer is that tracking wasn't happening at the work item level. Developers moved cards from in progress to done without updating remaining work fields or logging actual hours against individual tasks. Planning data and execution data ended up in entirely different places, and no one connected them afterward. According to a McKinsey digital analysis of software developer productivity, the biggest barrier to accurate delivery prediction is the absence of granular, work item level effort data. Without it, velocity metrics become averages that hide large variability between team members and task types. Now, let's talk about why your Azure DevOps Time Tracker ISN and #39. Telling you the truth. Azure Boards tracks task status well. It does not, by default, require developers to log actual hours against tasks. The remaining work field exists in the task work item type, but it requires manual updating and most teams abandon it after the first sprint. The Microsoft documentation on sprint capacity planning explains how to set team capacity per sprint, but capacity is an input, not a measurement. Knowing a developer has 32 hours available tells you nothing about how those hours were actually spent across work items. Most Azure Consulting Services teams flag this configuration gap in their very first ADO audit because it affects every downstream metric. The critical gap is between planned hours set at sprint start and actual hours logged during execution. Most Azure DevOps setups capture only the first number, never the second. Now, next up, manual time logging versus work item native tracking. Most teams that recognize the problem default to spreadsheets. Developers export their tasks each Friday, fill in hours in a shared Excel file, and a project manager reconciles the numbers before the retrospective. This approach has 3 consistent failure modes. For teams also managing Power Automate workflows or cross-system integrations, the disconnect compounds. Time data lives in a separate tool that doesn't feed back into ADO, so project metrics are always partial. Power Automate consulting work often surfaces this spreadsheet to ADO gap as the first process to eliminate, since manual reconciliation is exactly the kind of friction automation should target first. Next up, how to configure Azure DevOps for accurate time tracking. The steps below apply to teams using the Agile or Scrum process template. CMMI and custom templates use slightly different field names but the same configuration logic. The remaining work field on the task work item type is the foundation of any functional Azure DevOps time tracker setup. By default, this field is visible but not enforced. The first configuration change is making it required at task creation. In Azure Boards, go to Organization Settings Process, your process, work item types task and mark remaining work as required. This forces an estimate before work begins and creates the comparison baseline you need at retrospective time. Next up, now, what accurate time data tells you about your engineering team. Once you have clean actual hours data at the work item level, retrospectives change character. Instead of "we underestimated again," you can say authentication-related tasks consistently run 40% overestimate and these 3 developers account for most of that variance. That specificity lets you adjust estimates for future similar tasks using real historical data. Q Services has completed 500+ Azure and Microsoft platform projects since 2014, and per work item velocity is the single most actionable metric engineering managers ask for when projects start to slip. Teams that track and publish delivery metrics transparently make better sprint commitments because they can see exactly which task categories eat disproportionate time. Now, introducing TimeTrack, the free Azure DevOps time tracker. TimeTrack is Q Services' free Azure DevOps extension that solves the tracking problem above without requiring custom fields, manual exports, or external spreadsheets. It logs developer hours directly inside ADO work items, meaning the time data lives exactly where the work item data lives. The extension adds a time logging panel to every work item. Developers start a timer when they pick up a task and stop it when they transition or close it. Logged hours right back to the work item record in real time. No memory dependency, no reconciliation step, no export required. The result is per work item time data that is accurate, timestamped, and immediately visible in sprint reports. This is exactly what engineering managers need to stop being blindsided by sprint overruns, and it's the gap that most default Azure DevOps setups leave open. Let's talk about now, beyond time tracking, when you need Azure DevOps consulting services. For teams where broken time estimates are a symptom of broader process or architecture problems, a structured engagement surfaces the full picture. A dedicated Azure architecture review covers how CI/CD pipelines are configured, whether your sprint process matches how work actually flows through your teams, and whether your Azure infrastructure assessment reflects current workload demands. As a Microsoft certified solutions partner specializing in Azure, Q Services serves as both a trusted Azure migration partner and a full-service Azure consulting services provider to mid-market and enterprise clients across healthcare, logistics, and financial services. Our work spans helping teams migrate on-premise workloads to Azure, configure Azure landing zone environments, set up hybrid cloud Azure infrastructure, and deliver Azure cloud migration services that reduce overhead while improving deployment consistency. Let's talk about now. Conclusion. Sprint estimates don't fix themselves. If your Azure DevOps time tracker is missing actual hours data at the work item level, your burndown charts reflect guesswork, your retrospectives identify symptoms rather than causes, and your estimates will fail again next sprint. The configuration steps in this guide close the most common tracking gaps. TimeTrack eliminates the logging friction that makes those configurations break down in practice, and it does it without adding complexity to your existing Azure DevOps workflow. Try TimeTrack free at https://timetrack.qservicesit.net. It installs an ADO in under 5 minutes and starts capturing per work item hours from day one. For teams that need broader support, from Azure DevOps consulting services and Azure app modernization to a full Azure infrastructure assessment or Azure architecture review, Q Services is ready to help.